The Jesuits provided a rigorous and disciplined learning environment. 10 to 11 hours of study a day in a program based on the classics, Latin, the history of ancient Rome and Greece, the scriptures, philosophy and ethics, and the mastery of rhetoric better to prepare the future apologists of the faith. The depth of Pierre's education in the classics remained evident throughout his 50-year career as a writer. As he put pen to paper, the disciplines and drilling repetitions of the Jesuits gave him the ability to quote the ancients from memory, including Homer, Plato, Aristotle, and Demosthenes, among others. But it was more than academic exercises that fixed Pierre's mind so fully on the classical world. When he was 11 in 1874, his classroom studies came to life in a very real way as the Germans began a 6-year archaeological dig in ancient Olympia, where the Olympic Games had been held for 1,200 years, and the 45-foot gold and ivory statue of Zeus ranked as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Having been lost to humanity for 15 centuries, buried in 45 feet of silt from floods and earthquakes at the intersection of the Alpheus and Caladios rivers, the legends of archaic Olympia began to emerge from the earth in spectacular discoveries. 130 statues, 40 monuments, 13,000 bronze votives, 6,000 coins, 400 engraved names of Olympic victors past, culminated on May 8, 1877, when the Germans found the Hermes of Praxiteles in the Temple of Hera, remarkably in the exact spot where Pausanias placed it in Descriptions of Greece, his 2nd century journal of life in Hellas. The German dig lasted 6 years and renewed the European fascination with the classical world, its rituals, symbols, and heroes. For a brilliant young student who had invented a kingdom of his own only a few years before, the mythology and reality of Olympia arrived with a spellbinding force. Years later, recalling the experience, he would write, "Nothing in ancient history has given me more food for thought than Olympia. This dream city, consecrated to a task strictly human and material in form, but purified and elevated by the idea of patriotism, loomed with its colonnades and porticos unceasingly before my adolescent mind. A seed had been planted that would blossom 15 years later. Germany had brought to light what remained of Olympia. Why should not France succeed in rebuilding its splendors?" Between 1883 and 1885, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, adorned in tux and top hat, took to the glittering social life of Belle Époque Paris with an exuberant passion. Dinner party invitations from the Rothschilds, the Princess de Sagan, La Duchesse de Bassisia, and other prominent hosts drew Pierre into the world of fêtes royalistes and salons, where his name was immediately known because his older brother Paul had become a popular dinner party entertainer years before. In his scrapbook, illustrated humorously in his own hand, he kept a long list of the young women he twirled around the dance floor. The sweeping changes in Parisian cultural life, the dazzling nightlife of the clubs of Montmartre, the sensation created by the Impressionists as they mounted their own Salon des Refusés, and writings of Baudelaire, Verlaine, and Rimbaud all paint a portrait of a society in transition. It was a time of upheaval, a time for rebellious spirits calling for a break with the past. A break that inspired young Pierre de Coubertin to yearn for a cause that would help him change the country he loved. As he began to search for the true purpose of his life, he rejected the military path at Saint Cyr and the law of the Catholic University of Paris. His search soon became a quest as he turned to 2 French intellectual giants of the time, Hippolyte Taine, Frédéric Leboeuf, both of whom would serve as guideposts on the path he followed. At a sojourn at Morville, he read Taine's Notes sur Angleterre and was transported back to Rugby and the fields of play he longed for as a boy when he read Tom Brown's School Days, which Taine quoted extensively. delivering arguments for changing French education to align with the freedom he saw in Britain. Almost in passing, as Taine summarized the impact of sports on England's young boys, he made two references to ancient Olympia, which may have seeded the link between education and Olympic sport that would soon drive Pierre's life. Seeking closer personal links to Taine and the academic leaders of Paris, Pierre enrolled in the École Libre des Sciences Politiques, the PO. This new institution, founded in 1872 by Taine, Émile Boutmy, Ernest Renan, Albert Sorel, and others, became the stage for Coubertin's swift and surprising engagement with France's intelligentsia. In the year he turned 26, the 1889 Paris Universal Exposition, which would attract 32 million people between May and November, filled Pierre de Coubertin with a vision for the power of global events. With the new 984-foot Eiffel Tower as its signature attraction, the expo was produced by the Third Republic to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution and celebrate 2 decades of national progress under the still young government. Pierre de Coubertin rallied in support of the Third Republic and organized his first public event as part of the expo's programming. The grand opening on May 6th took the form of a state ceremony. France's president, Sadi Carnot, led a large delegation along a parade route from the Champs-Élysées across the Pont d'Iéna to enter the expo through the Eiffel Tower's gateway. Opposite the Eiffel sat the vast facade of the Gallery of Machines, enclosing 60,000 square meters under its steel and glass structure. Topped by a Rococo blue glass dome, shining in the sunlight like the eye of God, the gallery was crowned by a 7-meter statue of Marianne, the symbolic embodiment of all that France had become and hoped to be. 200,000 people participated in the opening that day, one of whom would carry its lessons forward. As the course of his career drove him toward producing a great sporting festival on the global stage, the images captured in Coubertin's memory that afternoon would find expression in the Olympic ceremonies he designed. The parade of dignitaries, the importance of flags, the interaction of architecture and ritual, defining speeches, and moments of patriotic pride, along with the awarding of medals that would follow, all found their way into the Olympic arena. As conferences unfolded in the weeks ahead, Coubertin attended Jules Simon's keynote address at the First Universal Peace Congress. The burgeoning European peace movement was in throes of expanding its influence, and all of its leading lights were engaged in the conference and allied closely with Jules Simon. Their overriding goals, to build bridges of peace between all nations, would have immediate impact on Coubertin's evolving ideas on international sport and the philosophy of Olympism he was beginning to develop. On a parallel track, Coubertin and Georges de Saint-Clair, head of the Union of French Running Clubs, produced a congress on physical education. 5 sport demonstrations were part of the congress, as well as Coubertin's summary of the findings of his international questionnaire on the status of sport in education, which drew responses from over 90 colleges and universities in the U.S. alone. The Paris Exposition, seen far and wide as a triumph for the Third Republic, helped cement Coubertin's relationship with the political leaders of France. As he departed for his first trip to the U.S. that fall, he traveled as a representative of his country. His official mission, approved by President Sadi Carnot, was to study and report on the models of education at American colleges and universities. In January 1894, Coubertin sent an invitation for the Olympic Congress to his growing national and international network. Scheduled for June 16 to 23, the program included an 8-day schedule of events that addressed 2 key issues: the quest to settle the elusive question of amateurism and a proposal to study the reestablishment of the Olympic Games. No one would be surprised by his intent at this meeting. as he began to plan a production that would stir the emotions of his audience. Ancient Greece once again came to his aid. The year before, two young French archaeologists working in Delphi discovered two stone fragments with curious letter forms, which turned out to be the lyrics and musical notations of a hymn to Apollo. The hymn was rearranged by Gabriel Fauré, France's greatest composer of the time, whose favorite opera diva, Jeanne Remecal, agreed to perform it in the Sorbonne's Grand Amphitheater on the opening night of the Olympic Congress. Coubertin also recruited the famous novelist and poet Jean Ecald to deliver an ode to modern athletics that would complete the cultural side of his performance. Baron de Courcelles, France's newly appointed ambassador to Great Britain, chaired the event. Coubertin recruited dignitaries from Russia, Germany, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Spain, Switzerland, of course, and the United States. But it was a new Greek ally that signaled a level of support he was hoping for from the Hellenes. The distinguished matter of letters, Dimitrios Vikelas became the official Greek representative to the Olympic Congress. Although he was not a man of sport, Vikelas, 59 at the time, 23 years older than Coubertin, proved to be more than capable and enthusiastic as a Greek who heard the siren call of his ancient birthplace. Against the backdrop of the new murals painted by Puvis de Chaumont, the artist of France, on the front wall of the great amphitheater, Coubertin orchestrated a perfect performance and led a full house to unanimously proclaim their support for his Olympic idea. As the Delphic hymn to Apollo played, the Baron knew all would vote in favor of his proposal. The 2,000 persons present listened in religious silence to the divine melody risen from the dead to salute the Olympic Renaissance across the darkness of the ages. As the week of meetings and banquets unfolded, two committees, one on amateurism, the other on staging the first modern Olympic Games chaired by Vikelas, explored the intrigues of launching such a vast enterprise. Coubertin's desire to place the first Olympics in Paris in 1900 as part of the next World's Fair turned out to be a stratagem designed to bring the Greeks to the table. Athens was selected for the first Games in 1896, with Paris to follow 4 years later. In the days that followed, Coubertin, Sloan, and Vikelas worked on the formations of the IOC, drafted its bylaws and charter, and set in motion plans for the organization of the Athens Olympics and the teams to be invited. And Vikelas departed for Greece to begin their tasks.